It's Football IQ, baby. That's right, Football IQ, where we take a look at the dumbest head coaching decisions of the previous week. We're going to do weeks 0 and 1 here because who doesn't love a lot of good Football IQ? Man, I missed this. I've told you guys many times, coaching is the most overpaid profession in the world. College football head coaching, football coaching in general. Let me explain to you why. Yes, you could say athletes are overpaid. They're not actually contributing anything to society. I get it. The reason coaching is the most overpaid profession, though, is because these guys are raking in millions of dollars to do a job that I believe, by and large, 50% of the country, 50% of the world could do as well as they do. At least with athletes, they are doing a job that less than 1% of the world could do. Less than 1% of the world can do what LeBron James does. Less than 1% of the world has the freakish athletic abilities of of players, of football players and things like that. But head coaches, heck, even politicians, you can hate on politicians all day. Nobody thinks they do a good job. They actually have to go win elections. That takes some talent. It takes a lot of talent to win elections. You know what you have to do to become a football coach? Be a football player, stumble up the ladder in the right moment, and you find yourself a football coach. That's it. Football coaches are the most overpaid people in the world. There is no second. There is no close second. And I'm going to set that poll question up now. Are football coaches the most overpaid people in the world? Yes or no? Are football coaches the most is being a head football coach, being an NFL college football head coach, the most overpaid profession in the world? Yes. And it is, by the way, yes and no. You guys can vote on that. I think it's yes. And it's largely because, and I want to insist this again, you can talk about the athletes, but the athletes are doing stuff nobody else can do. College football coaches are doing things that half the world can do. I really do believe that. And we're going to put it on display now with our Football IQ. And now I'm going to say if this is indicative of, for each coach, of a long-term issue, or if this was a one-off. And that's going to be Hot or Cold, brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Facebook.com/sports treasures TN, Facebook.com/sports treasures TN. Okay, let's get rolling with this. Number 5. Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost to Miami over the last weekend, 27-24. For the record, I really, really, really wanted Notre Dame to win that game. The reason is Mario Cristobal screwed it up again. He was sitting on a lead late, and he forgot that Notre Dame had an extra timeout. And so had Notre Dame won that game with more time, I would have been sitting up here today and trashing Mario Cristobal. But unfortunately, Mario Cristobal won. I don't get to have fun touting his stupidity. So we go to Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman had an elite offensive line all back. He's got a Heisman contender at Jeremiah Love at running back. And he's breaking in a new quarterback in CJ Carr. So what do they decide to do in a road game against a top 10 team to start the season? Let's throw the ball 8 times, 7 of 8 times with the new quarterback we're breaking in CJ Carr. They gave Jeremiah Love the ball 1 time. Love did only have 33 yards on the night, but he only got the ball 10 times. You got to give him the ball more than that. They never got him going in the offense. By the time they were trying to get him going in the offense, Miami had set the tone. That was a mistake. Marcus Freeman not getting Jeremiah Love the ball. Man, that was a level of stupidity that was hilarious. Just the game planning was absolutely ridiculous. But I'm cold on this being a long-term issue. And let me explain why. I think they had a scripted game plan going in to try to ease CJ Carr into the role. It just didn't work out. had Jeremiah Love really gotten going, it would have been a different story. Tennessee, for those who don't know, did the same thing with Team Martin at Syracuse in '98. They turned Team Martin loose immediately. The first play was a play action deep ball downfield. I understand the sentiment somewhat. I just don't think it was smart. So I'm cold on this being a long-term issue. Super chat from Timothy McGee. I want to put up why the athletes get paid more than the coaches, and yet we blame the coaches, not the players. Plus, coaches have to deal with stupid questions from John Adams. But Timothy, the athletes get paid more than the coaches because the athletes are more responsible for the wins. I mean, Joe Burrow, ask LSU fans 2019. Would they rather, they can either get rid of Joe Burrow or Ed Orgeron? Who'd they get rid of? They're getting rid of Ed Orgeron. Ask Auburn fans 2010, get rid of Cam Newton or Gene Chizik. You're getting rid of Gene Chizik. Okay, so that's why the players getting paid more. They're doing the ones that they're doing the actual winning. So I'm sorry. That's just the way I feel about it. All right. Moving on. Hot or cold? We go to Frank Reich, man. I'm going to torture some Colts fans right now. I'm ready to, and some Carolina Panthers fans if there's any of them. This was actually week 0, and it was some Butch Jones-esque stuff. Stanford is playing Hawaii in week 0. They have the ball. They're up 20-17. They have a quarterback who had only completed 50% of his passes in the game and was not playing well. But they were approaching over 200 yards rushing. And they drive to the Hawaii 24-yard line with a 20-17 lead and 6 minutes to go. Run the clock. You're moving the ball. They were unstoppable running the ball. You can run the ball more, maybe score a touchdown and take a 2-touchdown lead, but you'll at least probably get another first down, run more time off the clock, and get a field goal or determine what you want to do if it's a short yardage situation. But you can run a lot more clock if you stick to the ground. But what does Frank Reich do? Hey, guys, I'm not throwing the ball well. Why don't I put it in the air and see what they're going to do? They're not going to be expecting that. Yes, they're not going to be expecting you to be so stupid. I hate when coaches are like, why don't I do something stupid? They're not going to be expecting that. Well, yeah, because they're shocked that you're that dumb. Frank Reich decides, let me throw the ball with a complex pass designed for a quarterback who hasn't played well all game. Of course, the pass was intercepted. Hawaii was able to turn that into a field goal drive, and then they won it 23-20 in overtime. Hawaii did. I hate coaches that go away from what's working because they want to be creative and get credit for their play calling. For those who don't remember, the most famous moment of this to me was Tennessee, Florida, 2017. Everybody remembers Butch Jones giving up the Hail Mary. You know what I remember? Tennessee being unstoppable on the ground and throwing it 6 of 7 times they were inside the 5-yard line. I remember them on a 2nd and 1 calling a play action when they were unstoppable running it with John Kelly. I remember John Kelly on the final drive with the Vols trailing by 3, driving them all the way down into the 10-yard line. Florida being dead tired, and then Tennessee and Butch Jones going, these individuals are going, these champions of life are going to throw the ball now. We're going to throw the ball because they're not expecting that. You know, I'm going to be really, really smart, and I'm going to do something real stupid that no one's expecting. So after John Kelly runs it all the way down into the red zone, they throw it 3 times. 3 times. And then Butch Jones has the nerve to say after the game, if John Kelly catches the pass on the first one, it's a touchdown. Why'd you put it in the air? That's what Frank Reich did here. And I'm going to say I'm hot on this being a problem long-term because Frank Reich thinks he's smarter than he is. And that's the worst part about coaches. That is the worst part about college football coaches. They oftentimes, and NFL coaches, offensive coordinators particularly, they think they're smarter than they really are. So Frank Reich, that is a problem long-term. And yes, Frank Reich makes the list, and this probably won't be the last time he made the list. I can't believe I ever believed in him as a head coach, by the way, in the NFL. That's a football IQ on my end. All right, number 3. Let's get rolling. Okay. Steve Sarkisian, 4th down play calling. Pick your poison. I got no problem with Steve Sarkisian going for it on 5 4th downs, by the way. He only converted 1 of them. No problem with that. 2 of them should have been converted. Arch Manning overthrew 1 pass. Another one, he threw a pass over the middle. He threw a fade when it should have been a pass over the middle. I do have a problem with a lot of the play calling, though. One was the tush push on the goal line. They just did that because they saw Philly have success doing it. Arch Manning doesn't know how to run the quarterback sneaks as well as Jalen Hurts. They don't have as massive of an offensive line, like relatively speaking. They didn't have the same advantage in the trenches against Ohio State that Philly has with Jalen Hurts. And most importantly, it was 4th and beyond a yard. You run the tush push with half a yard or less to get the first down. So it was so stupid to call that play right there, and it really exposed Steve Sarkisian. But that wasn't just the only One. Two other fourth downs happened because, again, Steve Sarkisian wasn't giving the ball to his weapon. And his weapon wasn't Arch Manning. It was Quintravion Wisner, who had 16 carries for 80 yards and 11 carries for 59 yards in the second half and was picking up steam. We talk about Manning struggling. Sark kept putting the ball in Manning's hands late instead of Wisner's. But at the same time, he was trying to be careful with Manning's passes. How are you going to have kid gloves on Manning, but then also make him throw the ball more than your running weapon? It made no sense. The most egregious was on Texas's final drive. On the final drive, when they got stopped on fourth down, they were unstoppable running the ball. You know Arch is struggling. Wiseman gains 5 yards on a first down to bring up 2nd and 5. You know what Steve Sarkisian does? Dials up a passing play 3 straight times. All of them fell incomplete. Run the football. Run the football. Again, Steve Sarkisian pulling a Butch Jones, Frank Wright. You know, we're running the ball well, and they're not stopping us. But, man, if I draw up this beautiful play through the air and it's there, everybody's going to love me, and they're not going to be expecting that. And then if it's not executed, we hear, well, we just didn't execute. Or how about you just do with what works and you run the darn football? That's just the most ridiculous thing about this. And I got to be honest, that was embarrassing for Steve Sarkisian to do. But that's football IQ for play calling. Worse than play calling is clock mismanagement, and I'm going to come to that next. First 4 downs brought to you by Sports Treasures.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Ball collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
All right, our second dumbest head coaching decision of the week. And this actually has competition for the worst. Okay. Blake Harrell, in his first at East Carolina, in his second season, should be fired on the spot for his stupidity. I'm one of the only people who watch this game. East Carolina was facing NC State. They almost beat them. They lost 24-17. They drove down inside the NC State 10-yard line, trailing by a touchdown, and a 4th and 1 came up with 1:21 to go. ECU had all 3 timeouts left. Blake Harrell, in his utter stupidity, let the clock run all the way down to 41 seconds and then burned a timeout, doing both things guaranteed that if they didn't get this 4th down, NC State was going to be able to run out the clock because Blake Harrell doesn't know math. Well, they didn't get the 4th down, and NCAA was able to take a knee. Now, I'm going to be fair on something. They were inside the 10-yard line. Blake Harrell could have had the thought process of, I want to run the clock down because if I score a touchdown, I want NC State to have as little time as possible to go down for a game-winning field goal. That's fine. But don't burn your timeout! You can save your timeout. That's not going to stop you from running the clock down. Don't burn your timeout, because if you don't get the 4th down, you have all 3 timeouts. You still have a prayer's chance when you get the ball back to try to score again. And you didn't do it. Stop burning timeouts to talk about 4th down plays when you might need that timeout. If you don't get the 4th down play, coaches are too stupid. Why don't they understand probabilities and percentages? Their IQs are insane, okay? I think coaches burn more timeouts than they have brain cells. They burn more unnecessary timeouts in a year than they have brain cells. Blake Harrell should be fired right now. I'm hot on this being a problem long term because he just proved how dumb he is by making that decision. He's too stupid to be a head coach. I cannot stand coaches that burn timeouts on 4th down. Stop doing it. Fire Blake Harrell right now. Timothy, I'm sorry, but you're coming in saying why, and I appreciate the super chat, Timothy. I love you for the super chat, but you say why blame the coaches when the players didn't execute the play and yet they should be paid more than the coaches? Because the coaches, I would say the coaches should be paid more if the coaches are actually calling the right plays. It's the coach's job to put the players in the best position to win. Stop burning timeouts to talk about fourth down plays. If I were an athletic director and a head coach burned a timeout to talk about a fourth down play in the fourth quarter when they could need that timeout, I would literally fire them before they could finish the game. I would literally come down and be like, you're fired. Leave right now in front of everybody. I would dress them down in front of the entire fan base, in front of everybody. You should not be allowed to do that. You are stupid if you do that. Let me say that again. If you burn a timeout in the fourth quarter to talk about a fourth down play, you are dumb. You have low IQ. You are incredibly stupid, and there is nothing you can ever do to overcome being stupid because it is dumb to do that. Now, my final one, and this is just a doozy. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, does the opposite problem. Doesn't use his timeouts. Most inexcusable clock management in the history of clock management. Deion Sanders wins the Les Miles Clock Mismanagement Award of the Week in our Football IQ segment. Why? They got a gift. Georgia Tech had the ball. Game was tied at 20. And Haynes King on a 2nd and 6 ran down to the goal line untouched 45 yards into the end zone. Had Haynes King slid down at the 1, like he should have, by the way, for Georgia Tech could have taken 3 knees, run the clock out, and kicked a game-winning field goal. But he scored, giving Colorado a chance to tie. So that was already dumb on Georgia Tech's part. Kaidon Salter completes a 2-yard pass. Then he completes an 11-yard pass. Then he runs out of bounds, and there's an incomplete pass. But because of those 2 plays, Deion not using a timeout, the clock goes from 107 all the way down, I kid you not, to 18 seconds. Yeah, they let the clock run down to 18 seconds on 3 plays, 107 to 18. Deion Sanders decides he's going to address this to the media and try to explain why he did it. And this is Deion Sanders explaining it. And I'm sorry, his explanation makes no sense.
Let's just get the cat out the bag, all right? First down, we throw a lateral pass, right? We lose, 4 or 5 yards? Do you call timeout there?
Yes. Yes, you do.
No, you're right there. You don't call timeout.
Yes, you call timeout there.
You got to go. So you're running tempo, right? So the next play, you gain, I guess, 4.
First of all, yes, you call timeout there because you have less than a minute to go. They ran 15 seconds off the play clock. You're not trying to run tempo. If you run 15 seconds off the play clock, you're not running tempo. That falls under duh. Tempo is trying to run the clock, is trying to get a play off within 10 seconds of the play clock running off. You ran 15 seconds on the play off the play clock, meaning you ran 15 seconds off the game clock, and you're trying to tell me you were trying to run tempo? Get the heck out of here with that. Yes, you call a timeout there. Duh. All right, let's keep going.
14 yards, whatever. Now you got 3rd and 1, right? Do you call timeout there?
Yes. Yes, you call timeout there.
3rd and 1. You get the first down, the clock stops, correct?
Yes, you call timeout there. Why do you call timeout there? Because, let's point this out. Again, I got to spell this out for Deion. Looks like I got to spell some math out, okay? There were 39 seconds when you went down. It took you 12 seconds to get the next play off. You ran 12 seconds off the game clock. Stop with, we're trying to run tempo. Why? Why run tempo when you have the timeouts? So Deion Sanders' logic made no sense. It was really stupid. Deion Sanders does a lot of good things at Colorado. I actually think he's smart in a lot of ways, but that was the most mismanaged game clock of all time. Okay? And now, again, he recruits well. He's going to do well. He's still going to do fine at Colorado. He's got a lot of talent there. But that was beyond stupid. Deion Sanders wins our Les Miles Clock Mismanagement Award of the Week, and his explanations only made it sound dumber. I am hot on that being a problem for Colorado going forward with Deion Sanders. He's going to do a lot of mismanaged things going in the future. Now, you still stick with him if you're Colorado because he's actually one of the few coaches whose recruiting can outweigh what the program can actually get. So that outweighs what you can actually do as a coach because players win, not coaches. And more than often players win, not coaches. Okay. I mean, again, Ed Orgeron has a national championship. That's all I have to say. And Les Miles has a national championship. So Deion Sanders doing what he's doing as a promoter will get the timeout. We'll get the players. But that was so stupid. Deion Sanders, the dumbest coach of the week, wins our clock mismanagement award. That is our football IQ. I am so sick of coaches being dumb. And Brian Thomas jumps in. Caleb got something going on in his personal life to be carrying on like this, displaying his anger on coaches today. No, Brian, for those who know, I've always hated coaches like this. I think very low of what they can do. I think most coaches are people who stumbled up the coaching ladder to their job. And if they weren't football coaches, and if they didn't get into that ranks, they would work basic day jobs, maybe make a minimum wage. A lot of them. Nothing wrong with making minimum wage, but it's funny that you can have that gap between that and making $9 million a year. It's pretty pathetic. Now you can say athletes have that same gap, but again, athletes are doing something that less than 1% of the world can do. Coaches are doing something that half the world can do better than them. They have below average intelligence, most of them, and it reveals itself every single week, and it revealed itself this past week.